great. It's wonderful. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. The greatest number, the biggest numbers, the biggest number ever.
Right. But here's the point, and this is also why there's sometimes this lag, or we have to have these corrections. Is yes, there's the technical survey, science, and blah blah blah. But what is this? This is businesses that are reporting what their experience is in the economy. This is households reporting what their experience is in the economy. That is the data that feeds up into these numbers. Turns out, what are all of us living out here, either as consumers buying things or as people working at businesses and as employees getting laid off, hopefully not, but it clearly is happening at a lot of companies right now, or running our own business. And so again, we have to be very, very upfront and loud about what the truth is, what is really going, what are the real economic impacts of all of this insanity that is happening in Washington. And that's for all of us, no matter where you're living, to really show those true stories so that we can counteract all of the hype that undoubtedly they're going to try to be pushing, and that's not based in reality.
So the twice impeached, criminally convicted con man in chief Donald Trump goes on CNBC, says a bunch of whack, crazy, outlandish shit. This was the most racist thing he said, and national media act like, no big deal.
Back to their country with a pass back in legally, and we're doing things that are very difficult to do and very complex, but it works really well. We're sending them back, and then they're schooling, they're learning, they're coming in legally. We have a lot of that going on, but we're taking care of our farmers. We can't let our farmers not have anybody. These people, you can't replace them very easily. People that live in the inner city are not doing that work. They're just not doing that work. And they've tried, we've tried, everybody tried. They don't do it. These people do it naturally. I said, what happens if they get it to a farmer the other day? What happens if they get a bad back? He said, they don't get a bad back, sir, because if they get a bad back, they die. I said, that's interesting, isn't it? These are very, in many ways, they're very, very special people. Okay, go ahead.
No, okay, so.
I mean, I don't even know where to.
Morgan, he sounded like a plantation owner describing people of African descent who were enslaved.
Yeah, I think it's crazy that interview happened. I mean, let's just take a step back, that the president of the United States is calling in to a morning cable show to give his thoughts and updates on the economy. Like, that alone, when I first saw that they were tweeting out that interview was happening the night before, I thought it was a joke. I thought, someone just created a meme or something. That was real. That's crazy in and of itself. Talking about who might be the next president of the Fed just randomly at 8 a.m. on whatever day of the week that was. But yeah, he has no respect for the humanity. I mean, to think that people are voluntarily wanting to work these jobs is no, these are people that have fled wherever they're from. And we're talking about a lot of the agricultural workers, and this is their only means of supporting themselves and their family. And now the reason that many of them are not working is because they are terrified that this administration is going to capture them and send them to whatever country they decide they want them to go to, regardless of where they may or may not be from, or if they're here legally or not, or if they've committed a crime or not. Crazy. Suggesting that people in the inner city gave it a shot, but it didn't work. We know what that's code for too. So this is, it's so beyond comprehension that this is, again, where we find ourselves as a country dealing with this. But again, the main point is, this guy is not solving problems. He's creating problems, not just for Black people, but for these very farmers that he claims he cares so much about. They are not going to be able to sustain these businesses. Talk about, back to Andrew's question, impacts on all of us. Farmers can't do their job. Food prices go up. It's already happening. People are posting pictures about how much more they're paying from now compared to 2022. It's and then add on to all of that, the federal cuts that are happening, the most vulnerable. This is a ticking time bomb. And it really is just a matter of time before it starts to explode for absolutely everybody.
Tyler, again, mainstream media, no big deal. Okay, whatever. But that was an absolutely racist comment by racist Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely, Roland. I think it's no surprise of his comments, and I think he just continues to double down on his rhetoric, and that kind of just speaks to the person that he is and how he thinks about migrant workers, and also how he thinks about black workers and working in the fields. And I think it's despicable, and we know the occupant we got in office. As you said on your T-shirt. F around and find out.
Andrew. Andrew. I don't know how anybody. Again, for the folk who think we're just joking, hold up. I'm gonna play it again. I want people to actually just listen to the virulent racism in the comment. I mean, they don't injure their backs. Guys, play it again. Play it again.
Back to their country with a pass back in legally, and we're doing things that are very difficult to do and very complex, but it works really well. We're sending them back, and then they're schooling, they're learning, they're coming in legally. We have a lot of that going on, but we're taking care of our farmers. We can't let our farmers not have anybody. These people, you can't replace them very easily. People that live in the inner city are not doing that work. They're just not doing that work. And they've tried, we've tried, everybody tried. They don't do it. These people do it naturally. I said, what happens if they get it to a farmer the other day? What happens if they get a bad back? He said, they don't get a bad back, sir, because if they get a bad back, they die. I said, that's interesting, isn't it? These are very, in many ways, they're very, very special people. Okay, go ahead.
No, okay. So,
was he suggesting that if they got a bad back, that they would take them out back like a horse and kill them? I mean, that clip, I've heard a lot of clips from Donald Trump, and that clip is the most baffling. And a lot of people are talking about the Epstein files and releasing the Epstein files, but him saying things like this and still being able to remain president is just so beyond comprehension, Roland. I think we're all just at a loss of words on how to describe the hate that he's spewing in his words for certain types of people, not only just migrant workers, but also black people, referring to the inner cities, right? Because he thinks that all black people live in the inner cities, and saying that we tried that with them and it just didn't work out. I mean, oh my goodness, that has got to be the top 5 worst clips I've ever heard from our unfortunate president.
It's crazy. And Morgan, the anchors on CNBC. Oh, okay. All right, sure. What's for lunch?
Yeah, the fact that they didn't interrupt him should be some kind of journalistic malpractice. And here's the other main point I would say is, he's like, no one else wants to do these jobs. Why do a lot of farms have to? And by the way, a lot of these aren't like independent family farms. We're talking about big ag. We're talking about a lot of big companies. Why do they have to rely on undocumented workers? Because they don't want to pay people a lot, because they don't want to have to give benefits. And so why do a lot more Americans not work these jobs? Because they're not actually trying to offer good jobs to people, right? And so, he's right about one thing, though. The whole system will crumble without the labor of a lot of immigrants in the agricultural industry. That's about the only thing that he got there. But the rest of it was just wrapped up in racism and a real disregard for the humanity of millions of people in this country.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. Morgan, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me, Roland.
All right, folks, when we come back, Trump wants to figure out new ways to make money. Hey, sure, let's charge Africans who are coming into America. I'll explain next. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. The United States is the most dangerous place for a woman to give birth among all industrialized nations on the planet. Think about that for a second. That's not all. Black women are 3 times more likely to die in this country during childbirth than white women.
These healthcare systems are inherently racist. There are a lot of white supremacist ideas and mythologies around Black women, Black women's bodies, even Black people, that we experience pain less, right?
Activist, organizer, and fearless freedom fighter Monifa Akinwole Bandele from Moms Rising joins us and tells us this shocking phenomenon, like so much else, is rooted in unadulterated racism. And that's just one of her fights. Monifa Bandele on the next Black Table here on the Black Star Network.
This week on The Other Side of Change,
Diaspora wars.
The internet has been swarmed. Who has a right to Blackness and Black culture? Who is overrepresented, underrepresented? It's too much. It's making us dizzy.
We don't have to be prideful without this air of superiority, right? All stories matter within this Black sphere that we exist in.
Only on The Other Side of Change on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Jo Marie Payton, voice of Sugar Mama on Disney's Louder and Prouder Disney Plus, and I'm with Roland Martin on Unfiltered.
Well, folks, of course, we know Trump can't stand Black people. He surely can't stand Africans. And so now what they are trying to do is, if you're from Zambia or Malawi, if you are a tourist or a business traveler, and you're coming to the United States, they want you to pay a $15,000 visa bond when applying for U.S. visas. Now, the State Department says this bond doesn't guarantee visa approval and will be refunded if certain conditions are met. It comes alongside a new $250 visa integrity fee for foreign visitors, separate from visa costs. But neither Zambia nor Malawi has high visa overstay rates or travel bans. However, travel to the U.S. is expected to get tougher for many more African countries under this administration. So, is that where we are, Andrew? Let's just tax the Africans.
Yeah, that is a great way to deter people from coming to the United States if they are of a certain social economic class. I know there are a lot of wealthy Africans, but there are even more Africans that are not wealthy and cannot afford a $15,000 bond. There are a lot of Americans that cannot afford a $15,000 bond. So to say that someone coming from a different country needs to pay $15,000 just to fill out applications for the possibility of coming here, at that point, they might as well just go to England.
Tyler? You're on mute. You're on mute. Tyler, you're on mute. You're mute, Tyler. You're talking, but your mute button is on. Tyler, you're on mute.
I'm here. My fault.
We ain't hear nothing you just said. Oh, Lord, see.
I think it sends a strong message to the African nations that their citizens are to be treated with suspicion and not respect. I think it's a racist, double standard, because we don't see the same thing happening in other European countries. And I don't think it's by coincidence, but I think it's really rooted in outdated colonial thinking that treat African visitors as economic risks rather than global citizens, which they are. And I think this also, it continues to widen the gap between the global South and America. And I think it makes it really tough for diplomacy, especially as we're trying to increase and make the relations better between Africa and America, the African nations and America.
Absolutely. All right, folks. I love me a good town hall, and boy, did that happen in Nebraska with Congressman Mike Flood. And his constituents were not happy with him. They were lighting him up with questions. Roll the video.
Congressman Flood, I come from 11 generations of military citizens who have served this nation. I've seen the long-term effects of service on veterans' health and on well-being. This budget reconciliation bill that you support threatens to cut all of their benefits and support programs that go along with that. How can you stand behind this bill that erodes the very services that people like me, my family, our families, and younger vets coming home today rely on to live decent, healthy lives?
Well, first of all, thank you for your service to the country, and thank you to the generations of service to the country.
Please,
at my first town hall, I had the opportunity to. At the first town hall, the main issue that I took away from that was concerns about veterans' benefits, not only in the proposed bill, but just with the new secretary coming in. I met personally with the Veterans Secretary. We went over everything, and I will tell you, our Veterans Affairs are going to be better than they've been in a long time under this president. The Secretary, we sat down for the better part of an hour, and I would have to get my notes from that meeting, but I asked a lot of questions that came from that Columbus town hall. And when the time is right, and I have that in front of me, I will go through that. But I truly believe that number one, our veterans served our country. They were made a promise that we will provide their health care. I have a record of supporting, as a member of the legislature, our state veterans homes, and I have a record in our Congress of supporting veterans, and I will be happy to get more information from the Secretary. If you have specific programs you're concerned about, please reach out to Taylor and get us that information. Thank you.
My question is fiscal. With $450 million FEMA dollars being reallocated to open Alligator Alcatraz and $600 million taxpayer FEMA dollars being used to now open more concentration camps, and ICE burning through $8.4 million a day to illegally detain people, how much does it cost for fascism? How much do the taxpayers have to pay for a fascist country?
Americans went to the polls in November, and they had a choice between a Democratic candidate that had an open border, no enforcement, fentanyl, drugs, human trafficking. And they had a choice between that and a candidate that said, close the border, get illegal immigrants out of our country, stop the fentanyl, stop the human trafficking, stop the drugs, stop the crime, stop the violence. That's what Americans voted for. Americans voted for a border that is secure. And I support the president enforcing our immigration laws, which, by the way, were written by Congress.
Okay. So how can you justify taking health care away from 78,000 Nebraskans?
As I explained before, when you have an additional $700 million coming into the state of Nebraska for Nebraska hospitals, we have a state where our infrastructure is going to be supported, is going to be funded, and is going to be available for the people that need it. If you are able to work and you're 28 years old and you choose not to work, you don't get free health care in America. If you are in this country illegally, you do not get free health care in America.
Saying that silence is complicity. Your silence tells us that you have no problem with the January 6th attack on the Capitol. The pardoning of all those involved, the big lie about the 2020 election with absolutely no evidence. These are all markers These are markers of fascism. I have read a dozen or so books on authoritarianism and fascism. You said in Seward that you were not a fascist. Your complicity says otherwise. Have you ever spoken out against this administration and its Project 2025, which is a fascist machine? Have you ever spoken out? There are a number of people, it's been reported many times in the news that there are a number of our colleagues, Republican colleagues, who do not like this man and they speak against him behind closed doors in private. Maybe you're one of them. There is a thing, profiles encourage. Why don't any of you, because you know better, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you?
Sir, I want to be very clear with you. Give me a chance to answer his question, I'd be happy to. Fascists don't hold town halls with open question and answer series. And I will tell you this, I support law enforcement, and what happened on January 6, 2021 was not right, and I'm on the record saying so. I'm sure you can Google it, but I support law enforcement. I have prided myself on supporting law enforcement since I began as a member of the Judiciary Committee in 2005, and we started working on child sexual assault. We started working on the sex offender registry. We started working on all of these different DWI laws to make our streets safer. I believe in law enforcement. I believe in the rule of law. I believe in the rule of law. It matters to me. We have a lot of people that need to know when I see something that I don't agree with, I don't run to the TV station as my first stop. I try to stop it before it gets worse. I try to stand up and go to work to represent the people that I have in this district. And sir, I believe in law enforcement. Thank you.
I believe in fair taxation, but I disagree with personally benefiting at the expense of lower-income Nebraska citizens. Trump is a pathological liar, and citizens can't believe a word that comes from the convicted felon's mouth. Keeping Nebraska in mind, what actions are you going to support or initiate that will provide health care and food assistance for low-income families, protect Medicare, not increase the national debt, unmask the ICE terrorists, close alligator Auschwitz, and impeach Trump if he pardons Ghislaine Maxwell?
We protected Medicaid and saved taxpayers millions of dollars from waste, fraud, and abuse. This program, over the long term, will spend way too much money that we cannot afford if we don't protect it for those that need it. There are vulnerable people that need Medicaid. There are pregnant women that need Medicaid. There are folks that need to be in a nursing home that need Medicaid. We need to figure out how to keep more people in their home receiving care because we can't afford everybody going to the nursing home. So, sir, we, in my opinion, as your representative, with the $700 million coming into the state, the $50 billion rural hospital fund that we worked on, and the common sense protections of requiring people to work if they want free health care, and no illegal immigrants getting health care for free, I think that's entirely reasonable.
Yes. How are farmers supposed to survive as a result of this budget bill?
Well, I'll tell you what. I actually have this number right here. We actually, and it was in one of my slides, 1 year ago, almost to this day, we were at the State Chamber fly-in, and I was the first in our congressional delegation to sound the alarm about the farm economy. I've been talking to community bankers across this state that are worried that a lot of our producers with corn at $3.80 a bushel and soybeans down from what they should be, and higher inputs, are going to have trouble making their payments. And I started to talking to local bankers about what this year's operational notes renewal would be. We made it. We made it through that. Actually, that's not true. I'll talk to you about that in a second. In December, we provided $10 billion in economic aid to America's farmers, mostly for the American Southeast, Georgia, Mississippi, those states. I tell you what, though, I am worried about next year for our farmers and ranchers. I am worried about it. And let me tell you a couple of things that we did do. We put a $59 billion increase for the ag safety net programs, which is a $9 billion increase over the prior fiscal year. And you're not going to like this next part, some of you, but President Biden did no trade deals in 4 years. He did not stand up for Nebraska farmers when it came to white corn and the ban from the Mexican president's wife. Farmers and ranchers in this state are going to get a far better deal from Donald Trump's trade negotiations than we ever got under President Biden. And this is the only way to improve our chances to grow our farm income.
What specific action are you taking to defund or continued support to Israel and their aggressions on the West Bank and genocide against Palestinians living in Gaza?
I have said from the start, what happened on October 8th was an abomination. Well, October 7th, sorry. I support Israel. America has no better ally than Israel. And they have every right to root out Hamas and these evil terrorists, whether they're in Gaza, whether it's Hezbollah, whether it's the Houthis, whether it's the Iranians. They live under threat of nuclear and vicious attack every single day. I also believe that our country, working with Israel, needs to do everything we can to get those children food. No American wants any child, no matter the place they live, to ever suffer. But you got to remember, we're dealing with Hamas. They use these Palestinians as human shields in their pursuit of terror and destruction against Israelis. So I support Israel. I support Israel. I support Israel.
Next question.
Yes, first of all, I'd ask you please not to refer it to that monstrosity as the big, beautiful bill.
It's the name of the bill, though.
We know better. We know better. My question concerns veterans. Again, I asked you in March about cuts for veterans, cuts that will hurt veterans. I didn't really find your answer to the gentleman earlier adequate. How are cuts to the VA going to improve VA services? Also, what about the thousands of veterans who have lost their federal positions? And what about how that big, ugly bill, let me finish. How about how that big, ugly bill is going to disproportionately affect veterans who need SNAP and other benefits? Finally, what about the veterans who are seeing family members who have done nothing wrong being picked up by masked ICE agents?
Okay, so first of all,
my question
to
is
your
this.
first point there,
When are
the
you
bill
gonna
is actually
stand
called
up?
the One Big Beautiful Bill, and I'm not going to tiptoe around what the answers are because that's the bill that passed. And when President Biden passed the Inflation Reduction Act, that's what we called it, even though it did the opposite. As it relates to the VA cuts, what specific cut are you talking about so I can understand? Give me a specific example.
It is specifically general cuts in the VA's overall budget. I want to know, when are you going to stand up to the bully in chief and his disrespectful, un-American, cruel cuts that hurt our veterans?
See, this issue came up in Columbus in May, and I went to the Veterans Secretary. And the system, when we're done, will be better for veterans, it will be more efficient, and we'll have better services. I am confident of that. You cannot cite a specific program because I went to him specifically and said, show me where these cuts are. We went through it. I've got the data. I've got the notes. I've got all the information I need. And I will be very public about showing you what is happening with veterans as soon as I get the opportunity to avail myself of my notes. But I am very confident. President Trump, this Congress, the Veterans Administration, we are working hard for veterans, and we will deliver for veterans. We are protecting veterans, we are protecting Medicaid, we are getting results, and we are pursuing growth. That is what's happening right now. Protection, results, and growth. Thank you.
Well, that boy was lying, and you said he would lighten his ass up. Here is Congressman Don Bacon on CNN laying out how the economy in Nebraska is screwed because of Donald Trump.
And I would just say, from my vantage point here in Nebraska, we're seeing a bit of a troubled economic mess, or right now it's a troubled time. And I'll say, in Nebraska, the GDP here has decreased by 6% over the last year, and it's all about trade. It's all about getting corn and soybeans out the door. So what I hear with a weak jobs numbers, well, we're sort of seeing that in Nebraska right now.
So isn't that quite interesting, Tyler? Here you have Don Bacon, Congressman Don Bacon, representing Omaha, admitting they're screwed. The governor previously called Donald Trump because guess what? Those ICE arrests were taking all of those migrant workers out of Nebraska. Those farmers getting screwed. Oh, by the way, Nebraska voted for Trump. Just like Las Vegas is a ghost town, they are down huge numbers because a lot of those international tourists ain't coming. Nevada, you also FAFO because y'all voted for Trump as well. They're getting what they deserve because they're getting what they voted for.
Absolutely. I just said, F around and you find out. I think the backlash in Nebraska reminds us that even in deep red communities, that they're not monolithic, and they're waking up to the extremists and the hypocrisy that they're seeing from far right politics. I don't think this just wasn't about disagreeing with policy on many issues that I totally agree with them. I'm glad they brought up what's happening in Gaza and how children are starving, but it's about standing up for our communities and standing up and saying enough is enough to the politics that don't agree with our basic needs. I think when we see moments like this where voters disrupt the status quo, it signals a hope that the tide is shifting, and it's shifting towards accountability and real representation, because we don't see that happening in Washington today. And we're seeing that people aren't afraid to challenge power face to face. And that's and I think that's a powerful sign of democratic engagement. And I hope that it lies in this, continues in this cycle of resistance. And I think it's a good sign. It's a good sign that conservatives are reaching their breaking point. But my hope is that when the ballot box comes about in midterm elections, that we can see a tie where we can see our true values be reflected in Congress.
Andrew.
Roland, you have been working hard, and it seems like the tide is changing. When I see people with U.S. Army hats on yelling at their Republican leaders that they elected into office about the policies that are now starting to affect them in their neighborhood. Because when they elected these people, they didn't think that it was going to affect them. They thought it was just going to affect people that look like us. Now it's starting to hit home. Now these farmers are starting to see the issues out in Nebraska now. Now they're affected. Now, when I see this, that tells me that 2026, I'm hoping, and I love that you're shedding light on this, because I think 2026, that we're going to see a change. There's way too much happening, and it's not just about minorities that are being affected. It is all Americans now. And I think that we all need to be banding together to affect change and bring in some new leadership. I mean, the one lady had a shirt on that said, "Go fact yourself." That's how upset she is, that she went online to buy that shirt, knowing that she was going on this town hall to talk to Representative Flood. So the tide is changing, and I'm very happy to see this. And that's a kudos to the hard work that people just like you, Roland, are doing. So thank you so much, day in and day out, for fighting the system. And we have a long road ahead of us, but a clip like that shows that even in a place like Nebraska, which we felt like we had no shot in, that in 2026, I feel like the tide is going to be changing. People are fed up.
Yep, absolutely. All right, gents, last story. BET has announced that the Soul Train and the BET Hip Hop Awards are being indefinitely canceled amid rating decline and the shift in streaming. Scott Mills, the CEO of BET, said to Billboard, explained the network's decision, said they're not canceling the awards permanently, but may shift to different platforms. Now, according to Pew, 83% of Americans use streaming services rather than cable TV. Cord cutting is real, but also don't think for a second that the attacks on DEI is not playing a part of this, because a lot of those sponsors are no longer supporting Black content. All right, folks, that is it for us. Tylik, Andrew, thanks for being on today's panel. I certainly appreciate it, folks. I'm here in Cleveland for 50th anniversary of the National Association of Black Journalists Convention. Lots going on here. We're doing our part. Of course, I'm running for office, Vice President Digital. So if you're an NABJ member, you can cast your ballot. You can vote online until Friday. Everything closes at 5 o'clock on Friday. So we look forward to, of course, y'all voting. So be sure to mark Aaron Haynes for President, Ray Lynn Johnson, Vice President Broadcast, and, of course, me for Vice President Digital. Folks, tomorrow, Omekongo is going to be sitting in for me. I'll be speaking at the same time to African Americans in philanthropy in Chicago, and so look forward to that. But I'll be back right here on Friday. So lots going on, and, of course, we are all on top of this whole deal. All right, folks, don't forget, support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. Your dollars are critically important for us to do the work that we do, supporting the show, supporting the network. If you want to give me a Cash App, do so right now. Here's the Cash App. Use the Stripe QR code. Click the Cash App pay button to contribute. You can also use this code for credit cards. Checks and money order. Make it payable to P.O. Box. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. PayPal's R. Martin Unfiltered, Venmo RM Unfiltered, Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Be sure to get my copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available at bookstores nationwide. Don't forget to get our Black Star Network swag, Roland Martin Unfiltered swag. Go to shopblackstarnetwork.com, shopblackstarnetwork.com. Support our Black-owned products as well. At shopblackstarnetwork.com in our marketplace. And if you want to invest in Fanbase, download the app. And of course, if you want to invest as well, go to startengine.com/fanbase, startengine.com/fanbase. Folks, that's it. I'll see y'all right here. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.